Well, hello and good evening, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon with you, and thank you for joining me. I am Elizabeth Terry. I'm NLP trainer and master coach and flow consultant with the Entrepreneurs Institute and a passion test facilitator. This is part of the webinar series, actually the second webinar, I should say, in the series as part of the 90-day release, re-energize, reset challenge, the 90-day challenge. And I know I have some people who have been following along with the activities and things that we have been suggesting that you do in order to prepare for the end of the year and really get yourself in a position that you are ready for 2020. So first of all, let me apologize for the absence of my two normal co-hosts, Sharon Fiani, who is our wellness guru. Unfortunately, she had a family obligation that she just had to be present at today. And my other NLP practitioner and business strategist, Tanya Smith. And in fact, she should have been here this evening as well, and she's ill. So we wish her a really speedy recovery. But one of the things that I have learned through neurolinguistic programming is that you have to be flexible. In fact, we have a principle which says called the law of requisite variety. And all that really means is that the person with the most flexibility of behavior controls the system. So the more flexible you are, the more that you have the ability to not only keep yourself in a really good place emotionally, but also you have the ability to be of greater influence. So here I am, ladies, and I am here to share with you this afternoon, to show up, step up, and to give back. And the topic for today's discussion is the matter of releasing. Now, many of us go through life and we accumulate, I call it emotional baggage, stuff that really does not serve us well. And I've often said that, if airlines charge for it, we would be in serious trouble. I don't think we could pay the overweight. So today is all about, first of all, recognizing what some of that toxic sludge is that we need to get rid of mentally and emotionally, and then steps that we can take in order to eliminate it from our lives. Now, all of us go through life and we accumulate stuff. Some of it is good and some of it is not so good. For those of you that have gone through the breakout Create the Life You Want e-guide that I put the link in, and if you haven't got it yet, you can refer to the event page and you'll find the link for the e-guide. And in that e-guide, there is quite a bit of information about understanding your conscious and unconscious mind. All of us would be aware of our conscious mind, which is, of course, the mind that is the thinking, the critical thinker, the one that is determining our goals, the one that is very logical. And then, of course, there's the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind, in terms of the representation of the power that it has on our lives and over our lives and affairs, is like 90% versus, maybe 10% in terms of our conscious mind. So a lot of the stuff that we acquire is actually in our unconscious mind. So we may be totally unaware of it. So these beliefs sometimes are formed through a variety of means. And the age group 0 to 7 is called the imprinting period. So if someone, maybe a close family member, maybe a parent, unwittingly in some fit of frustration or anger, or just happens to be in a bad mood, might lash out and say something to a child that is in that age group, and that child takes it on very personally and says, "Oh, mommy or daddy said I'm stupid." And of course, mommy or daddy didn't necessarily mean that. They didn't have any sense at all, but it was just maybe in that moment that they said it. And if it happens a number of times, especially, then that child can take on this idea that maybe I'm stupid and I don't have the capability to learn and to grow and to be successful. So a lot of the stuff that we accumulate is really by virtue of our experiences, particularly in that age group. Yes, we can take on things later on in life, and we do that through a number of other means, like modeling. Who did we model when we grew up? Did we have a parent, for example, that was super critical and was always criticizing us? And so we developed this idea of never being good enough. And that parent was probably also very self-critical, and they had been exposed to similar experiences when they too were growing up. And so it gets passed on down the line, and we tend to model the behavior that we see in front of us. So if we have a parent that is always, for example, struggling with money, then we may very well take on this belief that we are incapable of generating sufficient wealth for ourselves, and any number of other derivations of that. So the modeling is also a very important aspect. And then, of course, we can acquire limiting beliefs when we have an experience, when we try something out and maybe we fail, sometimes miserably at it. And perhaps we have done other things and not been successful either. And then we take on this belief that I'll never be a good runner. And yet we have all the capability, but because we tripped once and we're not able to pick ourselves up and go on, then we develop this fear of any kind of sports, for example. So there are a number of ways that we can take on these limiting beliefs about ourselves, and then we then develop a very limited view of who we are. And because we have these beliefs, we don't take action that is going to necessarily help us go in a particular direction towards our goals. So we may keep ourselves and prevent ourselves from being successful because we have, for example, that idea that I cannot generate wealth on my own. We may decide that we will never be able to run our own business. And so on it goes. And then we actually, it's just like a box that we put ourselves into and just don't seem to be able to get out. So what exactly is a limiting belief? So a limiting belief is something that usually starts with I can't, or I'm not X enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not smart enough. Those kinds of things that are not necessarily feelings, but they stem from actually a decision that we've made about ourselves. The interesting thing is that we call them, loosely limiting beliefs, but in fact, they started with a decision that we made. We had an experience, and somehow in that split second, with what somebody said to us or what we saw, what we understood, we made a decision that this is part of us now. This is how I'm going to operate. And we took that on really at a very unconscious level. And therefore, we developed a whole set of strategies, ways that we operate, and habits that follow from that belief. So it's something that really can hold us back terribly in everything that we do. So now we have an idea of how they are formed. One of the other things that I think it's important to understand is, and I'm sure you have experienced this, that it can be really tough to get rid of this belief. Your conscious mind says to you, you know, Liz, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, look at it now. You've done this and you've done that, and all of these ways that you know that you can generate wealth. And still, you hold on to this idea that I'm incapable of generating sufficient wealth. It's almost as if there is a mental block. There is something that grips us, you know, almost by the throat and holds us ransom to this idea. So it's difficult to loosen the hold of these beliefs. Now, one of the reasons that we find ourselves in this situation is often that there is something that we are getting out of remaining where we are. You know, every intention, hi Sharon, and thanks for joining. Every intention that we have for sorry, let me just repeat that. Any behavior that we have really has a positive intention. So our philosophy in NLP is that there is something positive behind everything that somebody does. Now, that might be a bit of a large frog to swallow when you see some of the behaviors. But it's, when I say positive, meaning that in some way it may protect us. And that's why we hold on to it. Or it keeps us safe. Now, one of the things about the unconscious mind is that it doesn't really like change. And it doesn't like change very much because of the fact that built on the reptilian brain, which is that very ancient brain, survival instinct, that it sort of wants to ensure our safety and security. So anything that is outside of the norm, meaning what you have been doing habitually, then becomes a bit scary, and it's difficult for you to continue to move in the direction of your dreams, because it's different from what you have been doing all along. And the unconscious mind wants to, you know, hold you back and keep you safe. So there may be other reasons as well, but we call all of those reasons together, we call it secondary gain, meaning that we stand to actually gain more in some ways by staying exactly where we are in that box than if we were to step outside of it. And I know you might be saying, oh, well, that doesn't seem to make sense. But here are a few questions that you can ask yourself and see if any of those resonate with you and what lies behind it. So we have to be sort of super honest with ourselves when you ask yourself the question. So the first question then is, do I feel more powerful in some way with this problem? By holding on to this problem that I have, does it in some way give me some influence or some power? So that's something that you could ask yourself. Let me see. There is a question here. And I'm hearing that Sharon says you can't hear anything. And I'm not sure why you can't hear anything. I'm plugged in, and the audio is supposed to be working. I'm just not sure why. Maybe you could check your audio, Sharon. I'm not sure. I haven't done anything here to change the audio. Okay, let me just see. If I unplug this, are you hearing me now? Sharon, can you put your hand up or just respond in the comment box and let me know? Are you able to hear me now? I assume not. So I'm just absolutely not sure why you are not hearing me. And it says that my microphone is in and everything is supposedly okay on my end. Sharon, could you check yours? Let me just send you a message back.
Oh, now I can hear.
Oh, very good. So I'm going to, for the moment, I'm just going to mute you, and then I will, if you have any questions at the end, then I'll come back. All right. Good. All right. So we've solved that little technical hitch, and I hope that what I was saying earlier has been captured. All right. So I was speaking about the fact that one of the reasons that limiting beliefs that we have, those ideas that we hold on to, thought patterns that we keep on thinking, how they're so difficult to eradicate. One of the reasons is that we get something out of actually remaining in the situation that we find ourselves in. As crazy as that sounds, it's often true that we are gaining something by staying where we are. So I was sharing 5 questions that we could ask ourselves to kind of delve and do some self-reflection to see if there could be any truth in any of these questions for you. So the first question is, do I feel more powerful in some way with the problem? So by holding on to this problem, do I in some way gain some kind of control? Does it make me seem more powerful if I hold on to this particular idea about myself? The second question is, does letting go mean I'm forgetting something or forgiving someone? Now this is a big one. Sometimes, we like to think that if we hold on to a hurt, for example, and about somebody, that we are actually doing them, we're doing justice to the situation, because by letting it go, we're letting them off the hook, when in truth and in fact, we're letting ourselves off the hook. And I've often heard it said that to not forgive someone and hold on to the resentment or the hurt is rather like holding a hot coal in your hand and expecting it to burn somebody else. So is that belief that we are holding on to, are we holding on to it because if we change it, we will end up letting somebody off the hook or forgetting something that happened? The third one is, what would I lose without the story? We all have our story. And is it that if I lose this belief that I'm an alcoholic? I mean, that's a very deep one. And some people have modeled it. Some people have taken it on at a very deep level. And in fact, Alcoholics Anonymous, when you go first, and every time you go back, you have to reinstate the fact that I am an alcoholic. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people, for them, this institution and this framework works really well because it recognizes their foibles and their weakness, and the fact that they have to access a higher power in order to be able to overcome that particular obstacle. But it does reinforce this belief every time you say it. So if I have this belief, then what is, and that creates a story, of course, then what do I lose if I get rid of that story? If I so identify with it, then how does it impact my identity, my story, who I have now built up as this person that I am? Who would I be without it? And in fact, if I wasn't that, then what would it force me or oblige me to do or to be? Does that mean now that I have to be a responsible parent? Doesn't mean I have to be, the kind of partner that is going to be accountable and take responsibility at home and that sort of thing. So the story that we've made up about ourselves sometimes is that which we do not want to give up. The fourth question is, what do I think I need from the situation? So is it that problem or that limiting belief? Is it fulfilling some kind of need that I've identified? A need to be needy, to need attention, for example. Because sometimes if we are the poor thing, the one that needs that, then I'm craving attention, and it's a way of getting attention. Yes. So that's also something that can make it difficult for us to give up our limiting beliefs. And finally, who would I hurt if I got over this issue? Sometimes we have persons who are, well-intentioned around us, but we feel that if we change, we will give up, or they will give us up, or we'll somehow hurt another person. Because change, if it's in a small group and one person changes, like in a family or in a partnership, then often it is perceived as a threat to the other individual or individuals in that group. So if I change, then it can somehow be viewed as threatening. I give you an example, and I mean, it's not a very serious one, but I remember at age 18 when I became a vegetarian. And nobody else in my household was a vegetarian. Everybody was doing their usual, meat eating thing and so forth. And at 18, I said, no, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. And it was challenged by the people around me. And, they made fun of me. They thought it was hilarious. I mean, what's that thing you're eating now? That's tofu. Well, what is that? And how are you going to survive on that? And I remember a little later on, yes, about 10, 11 years later, when I was pregnant with my first child, and I got teased that I was going to have a callaloo baby and all of these things. In other words, a little maga baby. And in fact, my firstborn was 9 pounds, so that put paid to that argument. And the funny thing is now that, well, at least the two surviving members of my family, my parents have both passed on, sadly, but the two surviving, my siblings, are now, well, not quite vegan, but pretty close to it. And in some ways, even more strict. At least one of my sisters more strict than me. So it's just really funny how things turn out. But the fact that when someone changes, it has a ripple effect. And the people who are around you will sometimes feel discouraged or disappointed or threatened by the fact that you are doing something different. And so that can kind of lock us into this identity and these beliefs. So these are just some things to think about when it comes to doing your own self-analysis and figuring out what are those limiting beliefs and what is it that I'm holding on to or that I don't want to give up. What is my story that I have? What is the need that I'm fulfilling by not changing any of these limiting beliefs? So we can also get ourselves in what I would call a double bind situation. So here's an example. I can't be happy without a partner in my life. Okay, so that's one. And then we have a conflicting belief that says I'm not attractive enough to have the right partner in my life, or to be able to attract that individual that I would consider to be the right partner. So we're really in a double bind, because if I don't have the partner, I'm not happy, but then I'm not, attractive enough in order to be able to have someone like that in my life. Wow. Well, that's a real double bind that you find yourself in, and it's a conflict, and it can feel really, really uncomfortable. Or maybe it could be something like, you've heard the expression, I want to have my cake and eat it. So someone, for example, who would like to very much lose weight. They'd like to lose weight, and they said, yes, I have to lose weight. And then at the same time, I want to eat all of these things that I find really appealing to me. And that's a double bind situation as well. They are not necessarily beliefs. One is a want, I want to. Or I could have a belief that I can't stop eating all these sugary things that I enjoy. At the same time, I'm not able to lose weight if I don't stop eating all of those things. So there are numerous ways that we can really box ourselves in. So what can we do about it? I think that's the next important thing that we need to look at. How can I help myself? Now, in my practice, we use what is called timeline therapy, and that is a very quick process to help people to let go of negative emotions, and that's anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. Those are the big five that we have, and also limiting beliefs and limiting decisions that we have made about ourselves, and we hang on to, just like some of those that I discussed earlier. But in this webinar, I'd like to suggest something that I am familiar with, and it's a process that is used by positive psychology. And positive psychology, I believe, calls it the ABCDE process. And this process is stands for, and if you want to write it down, I suggest you just get a pen and paper now and write that down. And this process is, first of all, the A. So write it down, A, B, C, D, E. And for A, you're going to put across the word adversity. So A stands for adversity. I'm going to go back and explain a little bit more about what you would put here. So A stands for adversity. B stands for belief. C stands for consequences. D stands for dispute. And E stands for energize. So we have A, B, C, D, E. So how can I use this process? What do they stand for? So this process is a sort of self-reflection process that you are going to go through yourself. So for A, adversity, what you're going to do is to acknowledge and to state what that belief is. So I'm going to use the example that I had some time ago. And it was, I had this idea that I wanted to write a book. In fact, I still have that plan. So I want to write a book, but at the same time, I didn't have the time. I wondered whether I had the expertise. So the idea of what would I actually share in that book. You know, there's so many books written about things like neuro-linguistic programming and how to use your mind in a successful way and so forth. So how would I make this really different? And this belief that maybe I couldn't do it. And certainly a belief that I didn't have the time to be able to do it. So you write that down. That's sort of your problem statement. That's your adversity. And the belief, the B, of course, you can reiterate here. Now I just said what mine was. So a belief that I didn't have the time, and maybe I didn't have the experience, the competence, and the difference to be able to write that book. C now is the consequences. So if I hold on to this belief, well, what are some of the consequences? Well, the consequence is that I'll never write it, that's for sure. Maybe I'll never fulfill that aspect of myself, because I do enjoy writing. So there could be this unfulfillment that I will live with. And perhaps this idea will stymie even the fact that this consequence might be that my business doesn't grow as I'd like it to grow. Everybody else is writing books, so what about me? Why am I not writing a book? And maybe I would begin to disparage myself for not doing it, blame myself for this limiting belief that I'm holding on to. D stands for the disputing. So this is where we sort of argue with our unconscious mind. And we say, well, okay, so these are some of the consequences of holding on to this. Now, if I continue to hold on to it, then I won't get myself out of this box. So let me see how I can maybe look at this differently. So what is it about this book? I said I don't have the time to do it. Now, I could schedule the time. I mean, I could maybe put an hour a day to dedicate myself to actually sitting down and methodically picking up that pen or sitting at the computer and deciding, yes, I'm going to write this chapter, maybe breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces. And then maybe I could explore, well, does it have to be a big book? Could I find another way of fulfilling this need that I have, this desire that I have, and help to grow my business in perhaps a slightly different way? What about if I decided to, there are other ways to do this, write an ebook? Oh, well, yes, maybe I could write an ebook instead. And I kind of talk my way through that. What would that entail? What could I include in that ebook? And if it's not so large, then maybe I wouldn't feel so overwhelmed by it. So maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I could do that. And then, so that's a sort of an argument, if you will, that I'm carrying on with myself. And at the end now, if I look at it and I say, well, okay, this ebook sounds like a good idea. Maybe I can pursue that. And so, yeah, I believe. What is the belief that I want? What kind of belief can I use to re-energize myself around this idea of the book? So the ebook now. So I can take on this belief that, yes, I do have the wherewithal, the competence, and the time, because now it's a smaller, more manageable chunk of time that I'm be programming. So yes, I believe now, I have this belief, I have convinced myself that yes, I can do it, because I've written manuals before, and I find evidence of the fact that yes, I've been able to write those and write those very successfully. So I could convert some of that material that I already have and put that into an e-guide. Ah, okay. And yes, in fact, that is how I went about actually writing my first ebook, which is the one that I shared on the event site, the link to it, which is Break Out, Create the Life You Want. So that is the ABCDE process, and a way that you can actually move forward and decide that you can change your beliefs on your own. And just follow that process as I have described it, and I am sure that it will help you to come to terms with that limiting belief that you have, or you can use it for all of them that you have, and begin to loosen the grip. Even if it doesn't completely dissolve them, then it can help to loosen the grip that it has over you and your life. Ultimately, what you want to be able to do is to free yourself to live your potential. So that's really my sharing for this evening. I don't know if you have any questions, anything that you would like to ask me, then please just go ahead and do that now. I'm having a little challenge really here. Yes, I'm back with you. I can see it now. So if there are any questions, Sharon, do you have any questions there that you'd like to ask me? And I'm going to unmute you. And feel free to let me know if there's any comment, any questions that you have on the process, or any of your limiting beliefs, or just any comment at all.
When not necessarily my disputed beliefs, but when you talked about arguing with the conscious self and going back and forth, sometimes it sounds like procrastination could step in, or some kind of play could step in there. How does one keep the whole thing rational to result in the right decision?
That's a very good question. And the idea of procrastination is actually, procrastination can be the result of many things, and it can be the result of maybe even fear of success or fear of failure, either of them really. And sometimes we tend to put off. The idea, and going through the process, is that it can be a facilitated one. Now, if you don't have somebody to work with you in doing the process, then you are kind of arguing with yourself. And that is sometimes not as effective as it could be, because it's more difficult for us to be objective with ourselves and to hold our own selves accountable, which is why, we have coaches, which is why we have mastermind partners and accountability partners, and people who will hold our feet to the fire and make sure that we are really being objective in our own self-questioning. So I will admit that it is more difficult to do this work on your own. Some people have the ability to sort of step back and to be able to come up. It depends a lot on how much self-development work I think you've been doing on yourself, and your level of self-honesty and your intention and commitment to moving forward. I think all of those play into whether the process will be as successful as you'd like it. Does that help?
That was very useful. And the idea of self-talk came up because I use self-talk for myself to help give me more confidence in public speaking, and it was very helpful. And because I did self-analysis very well, sometimes we're too tough on ourselves, I think, is a problem that could even prevent us from acting.
Yes.
So there's a level of if we need to run something by someone else or listen to someone that we trust, to their advice as well.
Yes.
Not work alone in certain cases.
Yes. Often we can be our own worst enemy. And we're super tough on ourselves, and we're kind of programmed to look for the negative. And we look for the negative not only in the world around us, but also in ourselves. And
if you're not, if you don't have other hands up at the moment, why is it that we're programmed to the negative? Why couldn't we be programmed to the positive? We tend to think more negative thoughts.
Yes,
and do the wrong things. Especially in our youth.
Yes, I think it's part of the survival instinct. So we tend to look for the red flags, anything that can or could threaten us. That's kind of related to the reptilian brain, So we're constantly looking for signs of danger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to evolve, continue to evolve.
Yes, indeed. And I guess as we do our own search, or self-search, and our personal development or spiritual development, in fact, as well, then that helps us to engage with other aspects of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, and
absolutely,
creativity, and so forth. And we'll tend to downplay that sort of instinctual aspect. Yes, indeed.
Thank you. That's all very useful, very powerful.
Thank you, Sharon, for your questions and for being here. And so, folks,
You're welcome.
I'm going to sign off for the evening. Just wish you all a wonderful rest of Sunday. And I really look forward to our next webinar in the series. Do visit the Facebook page. We all will be posting different, that means Tanya Smith, myself, and Sharon Fiani will be posting different things on that page for you to help you in the whole 3R process, as I call it, the release, re-energize, and reset process. And remember that we have the upcoming retreat, which is on January 24th to 26th. And I know it may seem a very long time away, but if you don't plan for it now, then before you know what, we will be in December and then it's Christmas. So make sure there are only 20 seats available. So make sure that you visit my site, www.limitlesstransformationja.com, and you will see further information on the women leaders and entrepreneurs release, re-energize, reset retreat, January 24th to 26th. And you can find out much more about it and to register. You can also message me on nlptrainingjamaica@gmail.com or on my WhatsApp, which is 876-556-5177 to learn more about how you can become a participant in that 3R retreat to completely re-energize you and get you prepared for the next decade come January 2020. So thank you all very much for being here and for listening. If you're listening to the replay, and drop me a line. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments on what we have done today in terms of releasing those toxic things that hold us back. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye.